Okay, from here we go to Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. I wasn't too happy that they were going to end the Freddy movies. I thought there could have been, bringing in some new writers and trying some new ideas. It could have worked. I mean, I love these films. I didn't want these films to end. But with Part 5 not being that successful, New Line decided it was time to lay Freddy to rest, and they were going to do it in a big way. This film had a huge marketing push as it was going to kill Freddy off, and the whole end of the film is all in 3D, which back in the 90s, there wasn't any 3D movies coming out. Not like there are now, for God's sakes. No, there's none. And this was only the last 20 minutes of it was going to be in 3D. Now, Freddy's Dead is okay. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't hate it. It's just not one that I really care about as much. I think Robert Englund was cool in it. I really liked him in it. I thought it was cool to see Freddy's backstory and his family, and to see him without the burn makeup on, and to see what he was really like and how he became what he became. But the film is very silly, and I think it was intentional on Rachel Talalay's part to make it a little bit sillier than the other ones, because at this point Freddy was such a household name. He was like Santa Claus. Everybody knew who Freddy was, and he just wasn't the character that Wes Craven had envisioned and created back in the original film. At this point, he wasn't as scary. So, I mean, there's still some good scenes in it. I think the scene where he puts the hearing aid on Carlos and has the chalkboard and starts scratching it with his claws, and then the video game scene was kind of fun, but just didn't feel like the other Nightmare on Elm Streets. It was just, there wasn't anything scary about this film. I thought some of the interesting aspects of the film are Freddy's past, and you see Alice Cooper playing his father, and things like that were actually pretty cool and had a disturbing feel to them. And I wish the whole film could have had that, because it's Freddy's not a fun character. He's a disturbing character, even though he is funny in times. I think they got away from what Freddy really was. He was a child killer. So yeah, it's an okay film. The last happening in 3D was cool, but it still didn't take away from the fact that it wasn't the greatest story. So pretty cool film. Not my favorite. Don't hate it, but just not a big fan of it. Now from here, we go to Wes Craven's New Nightmare. This one, Wes Craven came back, of course, and wrote a completely new story, very dark story. And this one took place in the real world and dealt with Heather Langenkamp and people that had been in the Nightmare on Elm Street films. You had John Saxon come back. There's cameos by Tuesday Knight, Robert Shea, and Nick Corey, as well as Robert Englund playing himself and the Freddy Krueger character, which is this evil entity that is contained when you tell stories about it, and once you stops telling the stories, the entity comes into the real world. A very interesting story, very good film, made up for, I think, parts 5 and 6. Not my favorite by a long shot, but I think it's got this dark tone to it, and I think the fact that the earthquake in LA had happened really added to it, because the earthquakes in the film, it's like Freddy's coming into the real world. It's very dark film. I thought Heather Langenkamp, who had actually had a stalker in real life, really played this, playing herself. She did a really good job in this film. And Robert Englund as the new incarnation of Freddy is very evil looking. A lot of people didn't like the way he looked with the trench coat and the new claw that was made out of bone and fit all 5 of his fingers with the claw blades. And I actually thought that was cool looking, give him some, give him a little bit of a update. But yeah, I thought it was a great film. I was happy to see Wes Craven come back. I prefer the stories where it's, Freddy after the Elm Street kids, but for its own, and I see what Wes Craven was trying to do with this, he did a really good job, so this was a good film. Now, after this we have Freddy vs. Jason, which I've already talked about. I do have the remake here, which I've already talked about. Love Freddy vs. Jason. Remake is a mixed bag. It's okay. And then last thing I want to talk about is Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street documentary, or Elm Street Legacy. Very good documentary, 4 hours long, but not one boring moment of it. And this is one thing that I had wished all the documentaries could be, especially, and this is one of the next videos I might do soon, is I watched the Scream documentary that came out last year, and I wasn't very happy with it. And I think the reason why I wasn't is because this documentary managed to get like every actor that had been in every Nightmare on Elm Street to come to this documentary and talk about it, and it's just amazing. And you have Daniel Ferrens, who directed it and just did an amazing job on it. And although it's not as popular with me as the Psycho Legacy, I do love this documentary a lot, and it's one definitely worth picking up to get the full insight into the making of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So that's it. That's my little overview of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I appreciate everybody watching, and please feel free to give comments on what you think about this series. And I will talk to you guys later.